Hey guys, welcome back for some more tutorials. My name is Magnet, and today we're going to be talking about using Nydus builds in ZvZ. And Nydus worms are really one of the only places that have proven to be useful in this matchup, or rather, the only matchup that's really proven to have Nydus be useful is ZvZ. And I said that in the most convoluted way possible, but the point of Nydus builds is to be able to attack on big maps. It offers no defender's advantage, and it allows you to utilize your queen energy for transfuses that you don't normally get the opportunity to when you're being the aggressor. So we're going to take a look at a couple games here that involve Nydus builds that might be cool ideas for you guys to employ on your own. This is more specialty ZvZ, but it also can be quite common in the higher level games. We'll explain more about that though, and we'll get straight into the games here. So we're going to be watching Scarlet versus Tudming first. And we're going to be watching the way that they employ Nydus networks, and I think it's actually Tudming that doesn't. This doesn't strike me as a thing that Scarlet typically does. I believe, since this game is so short, this is specifically to skirt around the walls that people will build in ZvZ. So in ZvZ it's really common to take your hatchery down here, obviously, and then to wall off with some buildings, like a couple of evolution chambers and a roach warren. Maybe put a spine crawler behind there, maybe some queens, and that defends you from a lot of early attacks. But if you're the type of player that wants to play super aggressive in ZvZ and you're sick of dealing with these walls, Nydusing into your opponent's base can be a good way to get around that. So we're going to talk about that, and we're going to wait for that to develop. I'm pretty sure that that's how this game ends, because I don't think that I would have shown anything else for the first thing. It's been like almost 2 or 3 months since I've seen a lot of these replays, so it's been a while. So Scarlet grabbing the fast evolution chamber. It might actually be Scarlet that does it, because you do need a Nydus, or rather a layer 4. Did I say evolution chamber earlier? I don't know. Anyway, she's grabbing her layer. No, Scarlet's going mutas, so okay. This makes a little more sense. This is a good way to counter muta builds. Tudming has his own wall up right now. He's grabbing his own lair, and the idea for Scarlet here is that she kind of wants to turtle a little bit for a while she gets her mutalisks up. One of the advantages of mutalisks is that anytime forces are attacking across the map, it will allow the opportunity for the mutalisks to wear that push down as it comes across. So let's say there's mutalisks right here and you're playing only roach, and you want to attack with those roaches. Well, you have all this distance that you have to cover with your roaches while mutalisks are pecking away at them the whole time. So one good way to offset that is to have this ready to go, drop down a Nydus network, and you can Nydus into your opponent's main base. So we're not going to see the attack against a wall because these builds are fairly rare still, but that is another option. If your opponent's just turtling behind a wall and you really want to get in there, you can counter it that way. And honestly, I think Tudming kind of wanted to do that and didn't really care if there was a wall there or not, and this just happened to work out well against the Mutalisk build that Scarlet was playing. This can also be really good against Mutalisk too, so you don't have to take that elongated damage as you're attacking across the map and Mutalisk are just killing everything. So the Nydus network is coming up right now, and behind this, Tudming is just grabbing a whole bunch of roaches. And if you can Nydus into the main base of Scarlet, then Scarlet won't really have the units to deal with that. So the whole idea of defender's advantage, the whole idea of being safe from a lot of attacks because their reinforcements are so far away, Nydus just totally throws it out the window and just says, screw all that. We're going to have the same level of reinforcements. If you're playing a more greedy build like this, then you're going to take a ton of damage while you're waiting for everything to come through, because I'm going to have roaches in your base and there's nothing you're going to be able to do about it. They would ideally like to hold right here, and if they knew an aggressive attack was coming from roaches, they'd probably just throw spines down. But any sort of positional thing, it ceases to matter if you can get this Nydus worm up. Now I know there is the possibility of you being detected with this Nydus and having drones being pulled and attacking the worm, so this is a much more risky way to play this out. This is kind of a little bit of a coin flip, in the sense that you're just hoping that they don't see it, and you're just hoping that they're playing greedy and maybe hiding behind a wall, or they're going for Mutalisk or something. But it can work, and I wanted to address the point that Nydus builds are very underutilized in a lot of matchups, namely because they really only work when they're unexpected. By the way, bringing the queens with you is one of the highlights of Nydus builds. You can use their energy on transfuses, and especially against these Mutalisk builds, you can kill the Mutalisk with the queens. So also note that he's bringing a couple of drones, because a lot of times you can bring drones to build spines in your opponent's base, or in this case you could use it to build spores against the Mutalisk. So there's a lot of different things you can do with this, and bringing queens and drones along with the rest of your army is not terribly uncommon. And note that Scarlet was going for a counterattack here, because a lot of the times in Muta ZvZ you will want to produce a swell of Zerglings here to try to cancel your opponent's third. But if you do this faster one, then this just totally counters mutalist builds. So if you know somebody that likes to play mutas, this would be a really good counter against them. So a lot of queens are coming out right now. You can see this is for a spore. There's also a second Nydus coming up here, and that should have just to have multiple reinforcement points in case this one gets killed. So there are other avenues to be aggressive with this, and it doesn't just completely rely on you being in the main base with it. But yeah, against these mutalist builds especially, the queens being here, the spore being here, even if they target this down, it doesn't really matter because he has another warm-up over here. He can just reinforce on the other side. And yeah, this is a pretty fast game, but you will see this game every once in a while in high-level ZvZs, and it's meant to counter a lot of different things. Mostly meant to counter people that are playing without a lot of units and just trying to be greedy that way. So yeah, Scarlet's Supply is basically nothing. Two Ming's way ahead here. So just thought I'd start off with a cool build like that. But we're going to talk about a more practical build next with these Nydus worms. And it's mostly the more practical builds are kind of to get across huge maps, kind of nullify the big walking distance and nullify the defender's advantage. So we're going to watch Life versus Sue. Seems like we see these guys play all the time in our tutorials, but it's noteworthy because these guys hit each other really late in the GSL. So this is like the pinnacle of ZvZ stuff right here. So we're going to be watching these two, and I believe it is Life that does the Nydus, so we're going to watch how his mentality unfolds to arrive at this point. And this is going to be a much more conservative Nydus. It's not going to be one that tries to go inside the main base and kill him that way. Especially on this map, because you don't typically see a lot of walls built here. It's kind of assumed that on maps that are this huge, that by the time you'd have to walk all the way across the map, that you would have far less roaches than your opponent anyway. So what I mean by that is that if you were to make a bunch of roaches and you had like, you say, like 20 roaches and your opponent had 10, but you started walking across the map, in the time that it took you to walk all the way across the map, your opponent would have more roaches at his base because they're reinforcing right here than you would, even though when you decided to attack, you had more. So the Nydus, if you can come up maybe like right here, then all of a sudden the distance is almost nothing, and that's one of the big advantages of using Nydus on huge maps to reinforce. This is mostly to push a lead if you have a lead in the game for some reason or another, so let's watch the game unfold and we can kind of establish where and why he goes for a strategy like this. So Sue making a Baneling Nest. This could also be for another Mutalist build, and Mutalist builds are more common on this map. So if it coincidentally counters another Mutalist build, then there you go. That'll be a nice, good way to say you could beat Mutas with this type of play. But it's hard to identify that, and this is again a fairly big risk. Yeah, this looks a lot like Mutas with the 2-base lair. So I would expect that, and I would expect that that would be the reasoning why Life would go for something like this. So I'm going to see this start to unfold a little bit. You also need to notice that you do have to have an Overlord out somewhere. And trying to put this Overlord in a place that they won't usually look is a good idea. So maybe like right here, then you can maybe put your Nydus down right there. Something like that, so that the Overlord isn't detected or isn't killed by the Mutalist before you can really get this going. So Life is getting his own 2-base lair. And he shouldn't know that the Mutalists are on the way. At least I don't think so. He's seeing a third taken by Sue, and most of the time with these Nydus plays, they're either really late game or they're really early game. So they can be a response to a really fast third if you want to just try and kill him before they can get that established. So again, this is pretty aggressive, a little bit reliant on your opponent not realizing what's going on, but at the same time, that's what Starcraft's all about. It's a game of imperfect knowledge, and if you don't know this is coming, it can be really good. So Life continuing to play this out a little bit. He will be playing against Mutalist very shortly, and that might be what actually inspires him to do this, because we've noticed that he's not putting down any sort of Nydus network yet, and I don't think he will until he figures out what's going on. So continuing to play this out here. You can just watch in the production tab is what I'm doing right now. Sue does have his Mutalist ready to go. They are flying towards Life's base, and again, if Life does not want to get involved with the Mutalist countering, considering the travel distance, Nydus is a great way to get up there and make him pay for it. So a lot of damage still being done here, but notice the high amount of queens here from Life. They're both going to prove useful in these types of battles against mutas. The high queen count will be really good against defensive plays, or rather in your own defensive plays. You can transfuse your roaches, or the queens can transfuse one another to keep them alive for a lot longer, which definitely does make a big difference in these types of battles. But of course, if the queens are up at the opponent's base, then all of a sudden them having Mutalist to defend don't really matter. So you see Life, now he knows what he's facing here. He has a lot of stuff coming down, double Evo Chamber, getting his upgrades on his roaches, and it's really just a matter of time before he decides it's time to go with this, and it's time to make Sue pay for playing this Mutalist build against me. So Still just building up here. Note that both players are getting pathogen glands. Not too important for Nydus plays, but again, we're just a matter of time here. These guys are just playing out a fairly regular ZvZ at this point, and we're just waiting for a kind of a breaking point to establish. So this game isn't too much longer. We can see the Nydus network should be on the way very soon, and we're just kind of keeping an eye out for that. So we'll just fast forward up until that point. And there we go. So Nydus network's on the way. Life knows that if Sue was to stay on Mutalisk and was to stay greedy with this type of play, that being right up on him would be really strong. He's sending out Zerglings maybe to spot. He doesn't really have a lot on the map because the Mutalisk, or rather the Mutalisk did kill the Overlords, so I guess I saved that one. But now that he has spotting, he can drop his Nydus network somewhere around here, and there we go. And now that he gets all of his stuff out, he's going to shove all of his units into the Nydus network. You can notice he's loading in Infestors, even all of his Roaches, all of his Queens, and by the time he pops out at Sue's base, Sue doesn't really have any idea what's going on. He's going to be in a lot of trouble here. So Sue just basically has Infestor, Ling, some Mutas, some Hydras on the way, but the whole Defender's advantage from Sue is totally nullified right now because it's like they were just taking bases that were right next to one another. And that's how fast Life's reinforcements are going to be. So pressing up here, once you get notice that the Nydus networks will spawn creep. So one of the good ideas with your Queens is to drop creep tumors on the creep to help them continue to push forward here. It'll also give you a little bit of a movement advantage if they don't have their own creep spread. But since the creep's about to connect, the Queens can continue to drop down tumors, and all of a sudden the Queen's slowness off creep doesn't matter. So now it just comes down to Life engaging this properly, but considering he has just way better units right now, he shouldn't have that big of a problem. The Queens are back here fighting the Mutalisks, so the Mutalisks are all totally worthless in this defense. The Queens can transfuse each other for a long time, and they can also transfuse all these Roaches that are up here taking all the damage as well. So more Nydus networks. You can even Nydus at unusual angles if you want to get something like that done, like a surround. But considering he hit this timing so well, and considering the Mutalisks were totally worthless, all that money was wasted. And the strength of Life's army with all these Queens is really not to be scoffed at. So Life is just going to press through here. And normally in this type of situation, especially in like Roach versus Roach type of games, whoever was defending, even with this type of supply gap, would probably be able to hold this on. But because Life can just spew reinforcements from right here, rather than having to walk them all the way across the map, that's a really, really big deal here. You can't overstate how important that is. So Roaches are coming out right now for Sue, but Life should be sending his own in here very soon. But this really just came down to compositional advantages. This is one really good way to beat Mutalisk builds, as we've seen in both of these games, but we might have another video that talks specifically more about countering Mutalisk builds without the use of Nydus if you want to play a little bit more standard game. So yeah, GG, Life definitely employed that extremely well. I know this was a shorter video, but this is not a more common strategy. I just wanted to introduce it as an option in ZvZ if you guys were having trouble with this, or if you wanted to get a little bit more creative and kind of take the fight to your opponent, not let them sit back in their base all the time. So hope you guys enjoyed this. I'll be back with more videos very soon, so look out for that, and I will see you later.